This episode of The Witch Wave is brought to you by Woodland Magic. Hand-poured in small batches by an escaped academic turned candle maker, Woodland Magic candles are deeply inspired by nature, folklore, mythology, and literature. And I'm here to tell you, they look and smell so divine. Immerse yourself in a dark forest with candles like The Woods, Forest Floor, and Black Phillip. You know I love that one. Or conjure the magic of ancient goddesses with Persephone's pomegranates, Athena's familiar, and the Kaliach. If you're a bookish witch, you'll love their literature-inspired volumes of forgotten lore, Carmilla, and the Prairie. And all Woodland Magic candles are made with 100% soy wax and non-toxic fragrances, and they're available at awoodlandmagic.com. That's awoodlandmagic.com. And best of all, orders of $60 or more come with free shipping, and Witchwave listeners receive 10% off their orders with code WitchWave10. So head on over to awoodlandmagic.com, use code WitchWave10 for 10% off, and get free shipping for orders of $60 or more. This episode of The Witch Wave is brought to you by Ritual and Shelter. Looking for a magical place to shop and hold space? Check out Ritual and Shelter in Homewood, Alabama. Browse through their bookshelves covering topics of magical history, theory, and practice, as well as tarot cards and oracle decks from well-known artists, and even decks created by local witches in Alabama. From teas, tonics, and tinctures to toad skulls and tourmaline towers, you can find all of these and so much more on their witchy website, ritualshelter.com, or in person. So lather up that flying ointment and travel down to Ritual and Shelter in Homewood, Alabama, or check them out online at ritualshelter.com. Did you run out of flying ointment? Well, they have that too. Hello, my friend. I am often asked about how people can get even more witch wave and more magic in their lives overall, and I have the answer. You can join me over on the Witch Wave Patreon. This is how you can hear from me and my other magical guests on a weekly basis via my Witch Wave Plus bi-weekly bonus episodes. And you get the regular Witch Wave episodes ad-free, and you get detailed show notes for all of it. And all Patreon members also get access to my monthly ritual workshops, which you can attend live or watch the recording of at your leisure throughout the month. Rewards for some tiers also include magical merch and contests where you can win witchly prizes, as well as early heads up about my workshops before they sell out, and opportunities to work with me one-on-one. And all backers get access to our exclusive digital coven, where you can connect to a community of other wonderful Witch Wave witches around the world. So head on over to patreon.com/witchwave and sign up. It's a magnificent way to get more magic in your life and to support the show. Thank you so much.
The world is filled with bewitching people, and you might be one too. Welcome to the podcast where art is magic is real, and reality is stranger than dreams. I'm Pam Grossman, and this is The Witch Wave.
Hello, and welcome to The Witch Wave. Happy spring, Happy April, happy Aries season. I love this time of year so much because it feels like the energy is quickening and flowers are starting to bloom and everything feels so full of potential. To that end, I'm very excited to announce a new magical writing workshop that Jonica and I are teaching online on Thursday, April 10th, called Magic Mountain, the Creative Self in Ascent. And this format is similar to our writing ritual workshop and our occult ocean workshop, though you absolutely needn't have taken either of those in order to take this one, but just in terms of comparison. So this will be a longer, more dense workshop with some writing exercises as part of it. And during the workshop, we'll be exploring the archetype of the Magic Mountain as a space of initiation and creative inspiration. And it's going to be a combination of divination and writing and contemplation. And as ever, I'll be sharing lots of images and anecdotes about magic mountains in mythology and art and literature and pop culture and on and on. It's going to be really, really tasty. I've been wanting to teach this workshop for literal years, just absolutely dreaming about it. And through a whole host of personal synchronicities, it is clear to me that now is the moment for it. So please join us. Come climb the Magic Mountain with us and register over at the link in my Phantasmaphile Instagram bio or at pamgrossman.com/events. And as ever, it's totally fine if you can't make it live, because all registrants will get emailed the recording link to watch for up to 30 days after the live event. So come join us. It is going to be magical and mountainous and epic. Now, April is full of so many other springtime holidays and events, but one you may not be aware of is that April 8th is International Romani Day. And on today's episode, we are going to be talking all about the Romani people, their history, and their practices of folk magic and divination. Now, if you're not familiar with that word, Romani is the correct and in most cases preferred term of the people who you probably grew up referring to as a G word that rhymes with tipsy. And as I discuss in depth with my guests Paulina Stevens and Jezmina Von Thiele, that G word is very loaded. And it's a word that I bet many of you didn't even realize is now considered by some Romani people to be a slur, or at the very least, extremely outdated, particularly here in America. And as with other such terms, some Romani folks may still choose to use that G word to describe themselves. But it's a word that if you are not of Romani descent, you may want to strongly consider phasing out. Now, as we discuss on this episode, that can feel really tricky, especially when that G word is pretty culturally ubiquitous for those of us who are in our 30s, 40s, or older. I myself had witchy books on fortune telling with the G word in the title, and have bought divination decks like the G-Word Witch fortune-telling playing cards. Some of you might be familiar with those. And I starred in the summer camp version of the famous musical that is called The G-Word. And that musical is on Broadway right now. I've sung along to songs by Stevie Nicks and others that use that word. And I understand that there was no harm intended by the creators of such artworks. And also that that word was often used kind of archetypally or even in a complimentary way to describe a wandering, mysterious person with magic powers and enchanting allure. So perhaps, like me, When now confronted with the fact that the G word isn't actually the best word to use anymore, you might feel at first a little bit of resistance or maybe even shame. And I totally understand that. I'm not here to call anybody out. But as Maya Angelou is quoted as saying, when you know better, you do better. So I'm really not here to police anybody's language, and neither are my guests. But I do hope that after you hear my conversation with two magic practitioners who are actually of Romani descent, you will open your minds and your hearts and consider evolving that language that you use moving forward. And even more than that, I hope you will be as inspired as I am to learn more about Romani people and their lived experience, and give them the respect and credit that they are due in general, and also in regard to the practices of card reading and other forms of divination that they popularized, if not originated. But before we get to that, first, let's check and see what's come through on the Witch Wire.
Who is it?
Witches.
Kara writes, I did a spell while living in Spirit Heaven, Galveston, Texas, and at the beach on the Gulf of Mexico for Kamala's successful election outcome in 2024. I have been doing candle work and candle glass reading for a few years, and this burn message is extremely confusing to me. I used 3 candles where one represented Gaia and the main one was for Kamala's success. All 5-day candles burned very fast, clear, and clean. But there was one interesting small candle part that was left, which was on the word POTUS. My question is, I am confused about how to read and interpret this seeming clean burn with unnoticeable residue. The only message I have received is this dumpster fire is going to burn fast and be short-lived. Anyone you recommend, if not yourself, to explain? Hi, Kara. Thank you so much for this question. And it's actually really wonderfully aligned with today's episode because why, yes, as a matter of fact, I recommend that you reach out to my guests, Paulina Stevens and Jezmina Von Thiele, or at least read their new book, Secrets of Romani Fortune Telling, because they have a whole section in it on the practice of flame reading. And so they share things like, if a flame leans to the right, it means yes. A flame leaning to the left means no. A flame suddenly engulfing the candle and burning out of control means the evil eye is on you and you need to cleanse. Those are just a few examples. I'm not saying any of them are relevant to you, but go ahead, read that section of the book or reach out to them if you feel compelled to, because they will definitely have more insight than I do. Because I am not an expert in flame reading, and to be clear, it sounds as if you were doing a manifestation spell and not only a divination practice. That said, and it was a little bit unclear to me what you were describing, but if I'm understanding correctly, it sounds like the only part of one of the candles that was left had the words POTUS on it, and that part did not burn. And so one could conclude that this was a message telling you that the spell you intended could not or would not be complete, that Kamala would not become president during that election. And it's actually an interesting synchronicity for me because I myself was gifted a Kamala Harris candle when I turned 40. This was one of the presents that my coven gave to me a few years ago. And I had this candle for a couple years. And then on election night, which was 3 years after, I went to fish out that candle to light for Kamala. And I could not find the candle anywhere. I went through all of my drawers. I went through my closet. I looked in all the places where I keep my magical paraphernalia. And I tell you what, this candle was gone. And I racked my brains to remember maybe I gave it away at some point. I mean, it's absolutely possible, but I honestly have no idea. And even though I was very hopeful on election night 2024, and I did a bunch of other magic for it, not being able to find that Kamala candle gave me a not so great feeling, to be really honest with you. And as we know, that election did not turn out as you, nor I, nor millions of other people hoped. So look, this isn't to discourage anybody from casting the spells they feel called to cast. But sometimes spells don't happen for a reason, or they don't happen in the timeline that we want them to or think that they will. Sometimes greater forces are at play, and we need to accept that and trust in divine timing and do whatever we can to not give up, to keep showing up, to keep making our magic, even when we experience what we perceive as a magical setback like this one. Now, I still have so much hope and truly believe that if we can keep the flame of liberation lit in material, metaphorical, and magical ways, freedom and light and love will overcome. But in this case, yes, it looks like there is something else going on, and we're all just going to have to try our best to contribute to the positive and see how it all shakes out. So I hope that's helpful, but please do look into flame reading from today's guests or other experts for a more specific answer for you. Thank you so much. Now, on to my guests. Paulina Stevens and Jezmina Von Thiele are the co-hosts of Romanistan, a podcast that celebrates Romani identity, culture, and tradition. They are also the co-authors of the book Secrets of Romani Fortune-Telling, Divining with Tarot, Palmistry, Tea Leaves, and more. Paulina Stevens is a California-based author, activist, and spiritual entrepreneur. She was the subject of the LA Times podcast Foretold, which chronicles her powerful personal journey of breaking away from her insular community and reclaiming her voice. She is also the founder of Romani Holistic, a spiritual wellness business offering intuitive readings, herbal remedies, and handcrafted holistic goods rooted in ancestral knowledge. Jezmina Von Thiele is a writer, educator, performer, and fortune teller whose work is rooted in their mixed Sinti Romani traditions. Their poetry, fiction, and nonfiction have been featured in Prairie, Schooner, the Kenyon Review Online, Narrative Magazine, and other publications. Based in the New Hampshire Seacoast area, Jezmina leads transformative rituals and workshops on divination, spiritual wellness, and the creative arts, and provides private tarot, palm, and tea leaf readings, and offers spiritual and creative coaching online and in person. Paulina and Jezmina joined me remotely from their respective homes, and you can also watch the video of our conversation over on my YouTube channel, which is at Phantasmaphile. Paulina Stevens and Jezmina Von Thiele, welcome to the Witch Wave.
Thank you so much.
Yes, we're happy to be here.
And just for my listeners who might not be watching this on YouTube, can you each introduce yourself so they know your voices?
I'm Paulina Stevens.
And I'm Jezmina Von Thiele.
So we are here on the occasion of your new book, which is called Secrets of Romani Fortune-Telling, Divining with Tarot, Palmistry, Tea Leaves, and More. And I'm so thrilled to read this book because it was such an education for me. And I consider myself as someone who is fairly informed about different practices and different cultural contexts. But I was shocked by how little I actually knew about the Romani people and Romani history. And you both do such a beautiful job not only of sharing these different practices of divination, but of also giving the reader a real primer in the history and cultural context of the Romani people. So first of all, I just wanted to thank you for that because I learned so much.
Thank you. I mean, it's our pleasure, and we're so grateful that you're giving space to these issues with your platform.
Absolutely. So, if you don't mind, and I imagine this might get a little bit tiresome for you to have to do the emotional labor and the mental lift of educating people who aren't informed about the Romani people. But do you mind if we give our viewers and our listeners a little bit of that context? So, who are the Romani people exactly?
I love to give the spiel.
Good. Spiel away, Jezmina. Take it away.
Yeah, so Roma are a diasporic ethnic group originally from India about 1,000 years ago. And the early Roma left India probably because of the invading Ghaznavid Empire. And over about a century of warring, the Romani culture rose up essentially on the battlefields and were displaced after India lost that war. That's the prominent theory right now that linguists have.
That was so well done. You must have said it just once or twice before, I
Many
imagine.
times. And so basically, when Roma started moving west, it was the tail end of the Crusades. So a lot of dark-skinned people worshiping many gods showing up then. It went really terribly. And Roma were enslaved for 500 years in present-day Romania and were otherwise deported, mistreated, committed genocide against, and all these really horrifying things over the following centuries. And so Roma are about 15 million people worldwide. There are about 10 million Roma in Europe and about 1 million in the US. And then the rest are kind of across the globe. And we have been forced into nomadism and then also persecuted because of that nomadism. But a lot of Roma today actually live settled lives.
Thank you so much. And I have to say, so full transparency, I'm of Jewish ancestry. And so I was raised with many, many stories about the Holocaust and World War II, of course. And I am aware that it wasn't just Jewish people who lost their lives. I knew that Romani people were part of this and lots of queer folks of different backgrounds too. I did not know how many Romani people lost their lives during the Holocaust. I was shocked. In your book, you say it's approximately 1 million people.
Yeah, and it could be more because so many of those deaths were not recorded.
And I felt ashamed that I didn't realize how huge, I mean, not that it should matter, even if it's one person, it's a tragedy, but I didn't realize how many people were included in that. And it's just absolutely horrific. And also, I have to say that as a person of Jewish descent, and sometimes I say Jewish descent, my people were also diasporic, nomadic, persecuted. And so I saw some parallels between our histories. And so I felt a real kinship, even though obviously we have different contexts and so on, a real kinship with a lot of the stories that you told at the beginning of the book, especially in regard to the way that I think we both come from these ancestral backgrounds that are both otherized and demonized, but also exoticized at the same time. So, Paulina, do you think you could speak to that a little bit? Just that push-pull of people both like persecuting the Romani people, but also like dressing up like Romani people?
Yeah, it's definitely something we come across often. A lot of the times we see people dressing up as gypsies for Halloween, and that's one thing you'll hear us throwing around the word gypsy often.
Oh, we're going to get into that, my friend.
Yeah. It's interesting how we were persecuted for the clothes that we wore with like all the different colors, as Jez was explaining, basically finding our way through all that persecution into Europe and then coming in all these colors and being persecuted for that, not really being allowed to work certain jobs or just kind of be accepted into society. And then I guess we actually inspired like the bohemian style throughout Europe. Just a little fun fact for the listeners.
Exactly. So, since you brought it up, let's talk about the G word of it all. And I know it's a very charged conversation. I want to make sure that we're having it sensitively. For those who are watching and listening, they might not even realize that the word that you just used is considered a slur in a lot of contexts. And I was wondering, first of all, if you could speak to that. And then I have so many follow-up questions.
Some Romani people use gypsy, and that is because we just feel like we're comfortable ultimately to use it. But it was definitely a misconception as we were traveling into Europe. I don't think the story is completely clear. You might need to jump in a little bit, Jess. We were sometimes, I think, gypsies would say they were from Egypt, maybe for a little lesser persecution or less treatment, like kind of like we could get away with it. But also, it was not even us saying it some of the times. I think other people were just saying, like, oh, we were from Egypt, we're from Egypt, like Romani people, not really knowing where we come from or respecting where we come from. And so that's how gypsy kind of became a thing. And another little fact, the word gypped is also a slur that not a lot of people really know about.
Yeah. So just to be clear, that word, the G word, it was a misnomer to begin with because the people that were using it thought that the Romani people were from Egypt. Is that right? So it's already this misnomer. And then was it originally used as an insult? Like a negative epithet, the way the word witch was a negative epithet to begin with?
Yes, you can definitely argue that. It's one of those words that was used a lot for the first time in official decrees condemning Romani people. And so it would be for, deportation or orders of violence against the Romani community. And it would often be referred to as like Egyptians or gypsies. And so it was in hateful political language. And it's interesting because a lot of that language, gypsy is the official word for Romani people in the UK. And some people feel like it's a very neutral word. It doesn't bother them at all. And some people are like, there is a slur. It's our official word in the UK. And so we're very respectful of Romani people's different experiences with that word. And we also acknowledge that in the US, it has certainly been used as a slur, gypped, to be treated like a gypsy. Or if people grew up hearing like, oh, behave or the gypsies are going to come take you or we'll give you away to the gypsies, it's been used in these very negative connotations for a very long time. And even the more positive lights where it's like, oh, I'm a gypsy at heart. I'm a free spirit. I'm a wanderer. It's like, oh, babe, that came out of centuries of genocide. That is a different vibe.
Exactly.
It can be kind of whitewashing in that way. And at the same time, I grew up using the word as well. I didn't understand it was a racial slur until I got older. And then I was like, oh, that explains so much because of the way that my family used the word was so different from how outsiders referred to us.
Yeah. So let's parse this a little further, if you don't mind. There are so many things in pop culture that are called the G word or some derivation thereof. There's obviously the Broadway show. There's so many songs. I mean, I'm thinking of songs by like Fleetwood Mac and Shakira and Lady Gaga and Jimi Hendrix. Like the list goes on and on and on. And in those contexts, at least let's talk about the songs, let alone the Broadway show, which is problematic in its own way. But the songs, often it's about like a magical, exotic, usually woman. Often she's sexy or intuitive or witchy. These songs tend to be complimentary even as they're othering or exoticizing. And let's be clear, neither of you speaks for all Roma people. No people are a monolith, and you each have your own perspectives. But just because the two of you are here and you wrote this book, I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about your relationship to the pop culture versions of using that word.
I will tell you, like, as confusing as it is to outsiders, unfortunately, like growing up in American pop culture, it's confusing to me too.
Sure.
I feel like Romani people are never represented in media. And when we are, honestly, here's a story. I was watching White Lotus.
Yes.
And what was super crazy about it is like, this is where we've gone into media. Like, there's this gypsy. They're like, can you call the gypsy? Like, you know, one of the main characters wants to see a gypsy. And so they bring over this old Italian woman. And I don't actually know if she's played by a Romani character or not, because I'm not the gypsy police, but
right.
I do know that it did seem very stereotypical. She was reading cards and, you know, you have this negative thing happening to you, blah, blah, blah. And then at the end of the scene, as she kept referring to her as like, she's a real gypsy, like a real gypsy fortune teller or a real gypsy psychic. And then one of the girls that worked for her was like, I don't think you're supposed to say that. And she's like, oh, come on. And then they just kind of kept going around about their day.
Right.
But I feel like it was such a great scene to a degree, just to acknowledge that, like, this is how it's presented in the world. Like, people are throwing it around, using it around, but it is a slur. The media, it's like that. The old media involving Romani people, oh, hell no. Like, it's not good.
Right. Right. And at the same time, you know, before we started recording, you were talking about how there are a lot of businesses that have that word in the name. And sometimes those businesses are run by Romani people. And let's also just state that when you both are using that word, and when many people in your community or of your background are using that word, it's this very intentional, often kind of exercise in reclamation. It's not exactly the same, so this is a little bit of a clunky metaphor, but like when I use the word witch, it's like taking a word that was a negative epithet and then using it as this word of reclamation. Although maybe a better example of it is like the F word in the queer community. Like, I would never call anyone that anymore, but in the queer community, they call each other that word. Are these parallels that sort of feel relevant here?
The F word feels akin, and then there's interesting context too, where it's like, I mean, I share that experience with Paulina where I get so excited when I see Romani representation, even if it's not that good. And
yeah,
it usually isn't that good, which is really frustrating because we're in 2025 and people still don't really know who Roma are or how to handle this. They didn't do a good job. But it does have the multifaceted point where it's like, you know, the F word in the queer community, for instance, has always been used maybe in this derogatory way. Actually, I don't know that much about the history of it, but probably your grandma wouldn't be calling you and everyone else the F word in this sort of like, oh, we're gypsies, you know, be proud of who you are kind of way that Paulina and I grew up with. And at the same time, have a confusing relationship with the word gypsy. So the super sexualized Romani woman comes directly out of slavery in the way that the super sexualized any woman of color often comes out of experiences like that. Roma are the most highly trafficked group in Europe still.
Wow.
And so a lot of these things have deep cuts that come with them. On one hand, it's like, I love Stevie Nicks just as much as any other tarot reader.
Exactly.
And on the other hand, when I hear that song, I'm like, oh no.
Yeah. Okay. That makes such sense. And I'm curious, when you choose, I promise we won't just stay on this word for much longer, but just because I think it's probably a new conversation for some people watching and listening.
Yeah, it's important too. We're happy to talk about it.
Yeah, great. When you're using that word with each other or publicly, and you write about this in the book, but it's very, very intentional, and it does feel kind of empowering for you, right? It's like you can say it about yourself and about people in your community, but you don't want other people using that word, correct?
I mean, that's how I feel about it. Paulina came up with the tagline for our podcast, Welcome to Romanistan, we're your friendly neighborhood gypsies, because we wanted to make people feel more comfy with us. And I love it. And at the same time, I work at a shop where I tell fortunes a few days a week. And someone called up once and they were like, oh, can I go see the gypsy reader? And I was like, yeah. I know they meant well, but I'm like, oh, I taught you the word Romani, like for a reason. But then, Paulina, you also have interesting things to share. So I want to let you talk about that.
Please do.
I think when you say, like, do you feel empowered? It's kind of weird because I've never felt empowered saying it my whole entire life. And now I feel like it's more of like, yeah, like I could say it. I don't know if I would call it empowering, but I would call it like slightly empowering because of spite. You know what I mean? Out of spite.
Yeah.
Spite is my favorite motivator.
Exactly. So it's like an act of resistance in a way.
Kind of, yeah. Like, this is what I've been growing up saying. And weirdest thing is, like, sometimes, like, I hear, when people are like, oh, like, you shouldn't say that, you shouldn't do this. And I'm like, we have every right to be saying this right now. Like, we can do what we want.
Resistance is resonating with me more than empowerment. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. Okay. That's great to hear. Yeah. When I was growing up, one of my first Oracle decks, and I fully admit this is like problematic across a lot of different vectors. Okay. But I was probably 10 years old when I bought, and I won't say the full name, but it was Russian G word fortune telling cards. And I loved these cards. I didn't know better. I was in suburban New Jersey. I got it from, the local New Age shop. And it was my early experience with divination. And that was a really meaningful experience to me. And at the same time, now I look back at that and I'm like, wait, Russian and G word, is that even a thing? And also, like, calling it that. And I mean, I see, and I am actually partially of Russian descent. There's just a lot of different ways that we could unpack that. And I know that's just one example of these kind of tools and books and that were of their own time. I'm just so grateful today to have, and I should say, I do not know the background of the person who invented those cards. I believe she was Russian. Do you know the cards I'm talking about? Are you familiar with them?
I've never seen those. Have you?
I have actually. I've seen them at a store I used to work at.
They were like triangular.
Oh, triangular? I remember a red box.
Oh, no, maybe they were square cards actually with different triangles in them. And you sort of twisted them to match up these different shapes. And then when you saw what the shapes were, and who knows if this person just invented it. This was the 90s. Like, I don't know if that even came from a tradition. I believe the woman who made it was Russian. I do not know if she was Romani. All of this to say, I'm so happy to be educated about this, and your book, it's a real act of education and generosity too, because you never come across as like scolding, but you're really taking a lot of time to like give us a whole context of this community and this ancestry before even getting into the practices, which I want to get into shortly. So just like a huge thank you, because I learned so much from reading it.
That makes us so happy.
Yeah, thank you.
Good. I'm so glad. On that note, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. This episode of The Witch Wave is brought to you by the Storm Cloud Oracle. A storm is brewing, and within the clouds, a message awaits you. The Storm Cloud Oracle is a new dark oracle deck from Claire Gregory of Bone Arrow Jewelry. Made up of bad omens, feared creatures, and gothic emblems created to help you find hope, courage, and meaning in dark times. Inspired by Gothic and occult symbolism, this 44-card deck transforms bad omens into wisdom, revealing the silver lining in every storm cloud. But the Storm Cloud Oracle doesn't exist just yet. It can only be brought to life with your help. The deck is live on Kickstarter now. Back it to claim your own deck and support this magical project. Go to Kickstarter and search for the Storm Cloud Oracle, or visit Instagram at Storm Cloud Oracle to find the link. Step into the storm. The clouds have messages for you. Support the Storm Cloud Oracle on Kickstarter now. The Witch Wave is sponsored by BetterHelp. Look, I know therapy can feel like a big investment, but the state of your mind is just as important as your physical health. Maybe you're like me and you spend money on nutritious food and skincare and a gym membership, which in my case I barely use, but that's another story. But I can say, hand on heart, that spending money on therapy is one of the best investments I give myself, because I'm taking care of my mind and my well-being. And when I'm feeling mentally healthy, my magic, my work, my life all benefit immensely. It makes such a difference. I cannot even tell you. But let's talk numbers here. So traditional in-person therapy can cost anywhere from $100 to $250 a session, and that adds up fast. But with BetterHelp online therapy, you can save on average up to 50% per session. With BetterHelp, you pay a flat fee for weekly sessions, saving you big on cost and time. Therapy should feel accessible, not like a luxury. And with online therapy, you get quality care at a price that makes sense and can help you with anything from anxiety to everyday stress. Your mental health is worth it, and now it's within reach. And remember, therapy isn't just for people who have experienced major trauma. It can just help you navigate the little things that come up and make you feel anxious or frustrated or upset. And it can help you come up with strategies to help you live the life you want. It can also help you celebrate the good things, and you know I'm a big fan of that too. I am telling you, I would not be living my dreams as a witch, writer, podcaster, whatever I am right now, without having regular therapy sessions. Therapy has helped make me a more productive, more happy, and more potent person. So what are you waiting for? With over 30,000 therapists, BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform, having served over 5 million people globally. It's convenient too. You can join a session with the click of a button, helping you fit therapy into your busy life. Plus, you can switch therapists at any time. Your well-being is worth it. Visit betterhelp.com/witchwave today to get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/witchwave. Hi, Witchwavers. I know, and you know, you want some Witch Wave merch. And our print-on-demand merch site is now available through Dashery. So if you want to get different variations of our gorgeous Witch Wave logo designed by Thunderwing, or our Witches Are the Future catchphrase designed by Lara Antal, printed on everything from t-shirts, mugs, totes, stickers, magnets, notebooks, you name it, you can. Shirts come in different styles and fabrics and are available in sizes small through 5XL, so you can order whatever you'll feel you're most comfortable and most magical in. So head on over to witchwave.dashery.com. That's witchwave.dashery.com, or you can click the Dashery link in the Witchwave shop over at witchwavepodcast.com/shop. Welcome back to the Witchwave. So let's now slide into the fortune-telling aspect of this book, because you share with us many different techniques of divination. You also share with us some beautiful examples of, would you call it goddess worship? I learned so much about that one figure that you write about. Is it Sarah La Kali? Is that how you pronounce it? Actually, maybe we could start there. So who is Sarah La Kali? I mean, I recognize Kali for sure.
Yeah. Well, I love to have another history hour. So
Yes.
it is thought that Roma, coming from India, early Roma, worshipped Kali, the Hindu goddess, and that she came with us on our travels. And not all, but a lot of Roma engage with this figure in some way, whether she's Saint Sarah or she's Sarah La Kali, or she's some combination of the two, or Kali Sarah or Sarah Kali. And she is like a goddess saint. She's sort of the uncanonized patron saint of Romani people. And depending on what kind of religion you may have adopted, you might have different relationships with her. But it's another one of those vestiges that Roma are an Indian diaspora. And she's a really powerful figure, compassionate mother of all Romani people, a protector. And Kali is a fierce and terrifying protector. Sarah Cully almost looks like if Cully and Mary had a baby. She's a little more beatific.
Yes, yes.
But still, like, her love for the Roma is unending, and we tend to celebrate her in the springtime. Her festival in Europe and France is May 24th and 25th. And I think there's also a festival in Mexico, July 25th. And yeah, we just really wanted to include her.
Wow, so she's kind of like a Hindu Catholic hybrid in a way?
Yes.
Yeah, a lot of Romani practices are very syncretic.
Absolutely. Well, it reminds me of a lot of different practices of different African diasporic practices. Like Vodou comes to mind, where it's this mapping of like Western African deity and Orisha, and then with Catholic saints. And then it's this kind of hybridization. I find that so interesting. Do you know, or do people know where the Sarah comes from? Because my ear thinks of Sarah, the Jewish, figure in the Old Testament. Do we know if there's any relation there, or does the word Sarah mean something else in this context?
Great question. So Kali also means black. And because she's depicted as having very, very dark skin, we sometimes call her Sarah the Black. And what I've read, there's a really great article that you can get for free online by Ronald Lee, we reference in the book. And if you just type in Ronald Lee, Sarah Lakali, I can't remember the exact title, but he's a wonderful academic and musician who's since passed. And he said that Sarah was believed to be one of Mary's servants. It's a sort of apocryphal biblical story where, Mary was escaping to France for some reason. And so Sarah was one of her attendants and was so devout and, sailed with her. And so often we have imagery of her returning to the water, which is really interesting because that's basically the Kali Puja where they bring the statue into the water. And so there are so many really fascinating parallels, even how we celebrate her with flowers. And there's a beautiful procession of white horses that accompany her statue into the ocean.
That's so gorgeous. Yeah, I find the notion of syncretization to be so rich and fascinating because in some ways it's like there's sadness there because it's maybe a loss, or it's a feeling of like colonization or appropriation, or, assimilation. That's the word I'm looking for, of trying to fit into whatever this more oppressive, dominant culture is telling you. On the other hand, I feel like what an act of like survival and resistance to say like, all right, you're going to tell me that the saints are in charge here? Well, guess what? We're going to like slide in our own deities and just have them wear some of the trappings. And then you get these amazing hybrid deities. And so I just think there's so much to unpack there. That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
So I want to talk also about the idea of protective magic. There's a version of the evil eye that you speak about, and I know different evil eye beliefs and practices exist all over the Middle East and, throughout various parts of the world. Can you talk a little bit about it in the Romani context?
Yeah, I kind of have my own theory that may have also been theorized by other people, but I feel like a lot of our protection practices do come from our travels. Like, one thing I think it's pretty popular in Southeast Asia to wear like a red ribbon or a red bracelet kind of around your hand, as well as obviously the Middle East and just the evil eye in general. But there's other little like ceremonies that we have for protection. We also do a lot of like burning of different herbs, as well as cleaning has always been a protection kind of spell almost.
Yes.
For us, for sure. And we would even like if we wanted to bring, money in or clear negative energy, like we would wash the floors, wash outside the front door with salt and soap and like some herbs and just like interesting things like that. So that's kind of what some of our practices look like.
And again, it's where like the kind of cultural mythologist in me is like, oh my goodness, we're all so similar, because I feel like if you go back to virtually any culture, there's practices of purification rituals, there's practices of burning herbs, there's practices of divination, like the red and the red ribbon. That's something that in Kabbalah and like Jewish mysticism we do. So there's like this universality to it, but at the same time, you want to be respectful of the specificity of the cultural contexts and some of the different, I suppose, political aspects and historical aspects of these practices too. But I found it really interesting that there's also this belief in the evil eye with Romani people. Can you tell me the word? It's a Jakheli, how that word is pronounced?
Checheli?
Yes. I think that's the word that you use for evil eye in the book. Is that right, or am I confused?
Mhm.
Yeah, there's a lot of different dialects, but that's one of them.
Okay.
We
Yeah.
really talked for a long time about which version we should
Yeah, we
use.
really didn't know what to use. We were like, whatever everybody else says.
Well, that's actually a great jumping off point because to be clear, and you talk about this in the book as well, the Roma people, as we said earlier, is not a monolith. There's all these different subgroups under that umbrella, correct? Can you speak to some of that too?
Yeah, I mean, I use the imperfect metaphor that the Americas, it would be silly to say that like all indigenous people are the same. Like
Sure.
there are different tribes, and Roma have vitsas or tribes or large family groups, and we are united by a common history, culture, language, but we also have a lot of differences too in our beliefs, practices, the variants of our language. It's so interesting because fortune telling, the reason we wrote this book is it's one of our survival trades, and it's a survival trade that has heavily influenced Western fortune telling, and it's something to be really proud of. But a lot of Roma might have very differing opinions. Like Paulina and I grew up in fortune telling families where this was something that we were expected to do to make a living. Other families might see that as something that it's like, oh, that makes us look bad. That's trashy. Other academics are like, can we please pretend that we are not doing this anymore? It's too stereotypical. It doesn't read
Mhm.
well. And then there are other Roma who are like, I wish I grew up in a fortune telling family. Can we do some fortune telling? But like, even just with our actual survival traits, there's a
Yeah,
lot of disagreement.
absolutely. That makes such perfect sense. Speaking of that, I wanted to talk also about a point that you make around intuition. And I love this point. You talk about the fact that, yes, there's this association with Romani people and with people who do fortune telling, and especially women, that there is this like higher intuition, that there is, perhaps this gift of being able to see into this other realm or see the future, what have you. And you talk about the fact that, like, on the one hand, there's something lovely about that. Like, who doesn't want to feel like they're special and have all these gifts? On the other hand, a lot of people who develop their intuition do so because it's a trauma response. It's like we have to be hyper vigilant because we have been on the run or we've been persecuted. I mean, this is something I think a lot about, this idea like women are so much more intuitive than men. It's like, well, we kind of have to be, right? Because we're more likely to be abused and killed.
Yeah.
So we're on a higher alert. And maybe this is a skill set that we have had to develop and we're taught or what have you. So you bring that up in particular around, the Romani people. And I'd love to hear you tease that out a little bit. Paulina, what does that bring up for you, this idea of your people being quote unquote more intuitive than others?
I definitely feel like intuition is something that you can work on. And I definitely agree with the trauma kind of response comment because I mean, my mom and ancestors, like, we would always talk about, like, oh, like, Roma have been through so much, and like, that's why, we can see so much. And it's definitely like genetically proven that the certain like traumas that we go through are carried literally, in those reproduction cells and
Epigenetics.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so it feels so close to home, I would say, especially with all the trauma we have experienced. But
yeah.
what I would say is I do feel like there's a difference. I don't know if I would call it intuition, but I think Roma, especially that practice and have lived in fortune telling families, I feel like there's a little bit level of a difference in like we do this for a living. We've been trained to do this for a living since we were children and like it's something that comes so naturally to us. So I feel like there is that level. Like I can't deny that, but I don't want to be like we're the only ones and we have the best intuition. Like no, definitely not that. But I think if, you're born with it, you grow up with it and then you foster it, like I think that it could be something great.
Absolutely. Did you have something you wanted to add, Jezmina?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting how that stereotype has worked for and against us, and Roma have leaned into it and away from it for different reasons politically over time. and just for survival. I mean, there's a very strong likelihood that Roma are the first people to have used tarot as a divination tool. We were arriving in Europe around the same time they were created as a game. And it's likely that Roma's association with being, magical and intuitive created this whole industry that people love. And even though we're not often credited for it or, given any kind of spotlight for it, this idea that Roma are so intuitive allowed this to happen.
Yeah.
And I think that, sometimes to survive, Roma might lean into it and then other times might lean away from it for the same motivation. And I agree with Paulina that, there's something about being raised to do the work that feels really special. There's something about any population that was raised within an ancestral spiritual tradition and has been persecuted probably shares that experience.
Yeah, absolutely. On that note, we're going to take another quick break and we'll be right back. This episode of The Witch Wave is brought to you by Dear Antigone. If you're here at The Witch Wave, you probably identify as a witch or are at least witch curious. So if you've been craving a Witchcraft 101 course, you are in luck. Introducing Magic Lessons by Dear Antigone. In this self-paced course, Antigone guides you through the art of connecting with your intuition and inner magical powers and guides in the unseen realms. Learn all about correspondences, practices, spellcrafting, and general magic goodness so you can hone your powers and live the life you want to lead. Now, this isn't a one-size-fits-all program. It's a journey crafted to tap into your inner wisdom and reveal your unique magic. Work with your lineage and the soul threads that call to you. Plus, you'll join a community of kindred spirits on the same path, learning, growing, and supporting each other along the way. There's no pressure and no deadlines. Just the freedom to explore at your own pace. Be the witch you want to be. Head over to dearantigone.com and learn more about magic lessons today. That's dearantigone.com. This season of The Witch Wave is brought to you by Black Phoenix Alchemy Lab. For 20 years, indie scent artist Black Phoenix Alchemy Lab, known affectionately as BPAL, has been formulating perfume oils for each month's full moon, inspired by their colorful names and descriptions in historical almanacs. 2025 will be no exception. Look for their monthly launches called A Little Lunacy, which include not only these limited edition scents for fellow lunatics, but also an ongoing series of perfumes inspired by classical artworks, and some which raise funds for a variety of charitable causes. The lab's general catalog is teeming with perfume oils, hair gloss sprays, beard oils, and bath oils, which can be yours year-round, covering a truly bewildering range of scent types and inspirations that include cinema, Gothic literature, and occultism. To that end, BPAL recently brought back a recurring scent series called An Evening with the Spirits, drawing from legends and historical accounts of Victorian-era spiritualism. These haunting scents, such as Psychodynamic Discharge and the Fox Sisters, will remain in Black Phoenix Alchemy Lab's web shop well into 2025. Month by month, year by year, the lunacy continues at blackphoenixalchemylab.com. I've got a really special new offering for you all, and that is new Witch Wave ceremonial soap, which has been made in collaboration with my favorite soap company, 2 et al. 2 et al. Makes soap and skincare using traditional alchemical techniques to transform pure water and plant-based ingredients into beautiful, handcrafted, cold-processed soaps, which are also magically charged. These soaps are beyond bewitching and luxurious, and after being a hardcore fan of them for a while, I knew I wanted to collaborate with them, and I am so thrilled that they agreed. I'm overjoyed to now offer Witch Wave Soap by Two et al., available now exclusively in the Witch Wave shop over at witchwavepodcast.com/shop. Two et al. Founders Matthew and Natalie and I put our heads together to come up with a special soap blend that is deeply magical just for you. The Witch Wave blend incorporates such intentional ingredients as black salt for cleansing and protection, yarrow to aid in divination and love, and mugwort, also known as artemisia, for lunar connection and visionary insights. It's also blended with the most beautiful fragrant oils, including frankincense, which smells incredible and also helps amplify connection with the divine. We were invoking deities like Artemis and Hecate when designing the ingredients of the soap, as well as the packaging. You'll note the skeleton key on the side. And this soap can be used whenever you want to ready yourself for ritual work or simply as a daily ceremonial practice to help you cleanse and recenter into your own magic. So go ahead and order Witch Wave Soap by Two et al. And me over at witchwavepodcast.com/shop. And if you want to check out Two et al.'s other incredible alchemical soap blends and skincare, you can do so at twoetal.co. That's TUETAL.co, and use offer code WitchWave15 for 15% off your order from the Two et al. Website. So once again, you can get our new exclusive Witch Wave soap from the Witch Wave shop, and you can get 15% off other Two et al. Offerings from their site, twoetal.co, with offer code WitchWave15. Welcome back to the Witch Wave. So let's get into the fortune telling. You said that you both were raised in fortune telling families. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that, and then we can dive into some of the specificity on that. So, Paulina, can you talk a little bit about your upbringing? Just, I know that you were featured in a whole podcast about this, but if you could just give us a brief summary of your background, that would be wonderful.
Yeah. So I grew up in California. I was born in LA, and fortune telling was something that wasn't crazy popular at the time. And we were expected, my specific family, we're Machwaya Roma is the name of our subgroup or our pizza. We're kind of like based in the West Coast. And it was just expected that we do fortune telling. That was a tool, like that was something that Romani people could do, like Jess was saying as well, like for survival, and we could do it anywhere. So as we were traveling or we were with many people, like we were able to always like read someone's palm on the street or go here or have our own store. And a lot of the time we lived in our stores. I was taken out of school early and I had an arranged marriage. That's just something that's practiced when I was 17. I ended up feeling like I didn't really want to live in the specific standards of my like subgroup or my community. So I actually decided to take a little break from fortune telling, and I think reinvented my own practice with obviously influences from how I grew up, the business and the spiritual aspect, and then some of my own little kind of Western aspects as well. And that's what it was for me. But it was very much growing up, I was always told, like, you have to do fortune telling. You can't do anything else. We weren't allowed to go to school.
Wow.
We had to dress modestly. I had to wear a head covering.
And Paulina, is that typical of like a traditional Romani family, or is this?
Yeah, I would say I am from a very conservative subgroup. One of the most conservative subgroups of Romani people in the world.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was the subgroup that I was born in. But I even had like cousins from different visas. My grandmother came from a different visa. Her family was different. They could kind of wear what they want. If they wanted to do fortune telling, they could. If they didn't want to. Or, they could wear their hair down. They could wear skirts. Some of them could wear pants. Like, you guys are super, Western.
Edgy.
Yeah, really edgy, but definitely not my subgroup.
So when did you find your way back to fortune telling? When did you decide that that was something that was important to you or that resonated with you? How old were you about?
I took the break when I was kind of old, maybe like 22.
It almost sounds like you went on like a are you familiar with the term Rumspringa? Like it's when Amish kids, they get a year to like go crazy and go out in the real world, but it almost is sounding to me like you I don't know how extreme your break was if you lost your mind for a while or if it was a little more tame than that, but it sounds like you really had to break away for a little bit and then reintegrate, is that right?
To a degree, for sure. I think that even when I broke away, like I'd still have some clients or I'd still occasionally practice it, but I wasn't like an open, like out there, like I'm a fortune teller anymore. Like for maybe like 1 year, 2 years, I went to school. I took some time to study in different areas. I got a regular 9 to 5 job and I was like, whoa, like I'm working in an office, like I'm a real American. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, like everything was crazy. But it didn't compare like when you're fortune telling and like you're having a deep conversation with someone like right off the bat there's a spiritual aspect, there is such a deep love for it. And I think just as time went by I was like I definitely want to keep doing fortune telling. And when I did get into it I was persecuted by the people that were proud of me because I left, and I was
Mhm.
persecuted by other gypsies. They were like, you
Mhm.
want to continue doing fortune telling? Like, that's our practice, but you're like out there. And they would say, like, with the Gadre, which basically means like I'm out in the American world and like,
The non-Romani people,
mhm.
Gadra. Yeah.
Exactly. So it was a weird little time, but I really feel like it was no issue to me now. Like you can obviously do both. Like I could wear my hair down and be with who I want and still do fortune telling.
Yeah, yeah. So, Jezmina, what about you? How did you find your way towards fortune telling?
I grew up in a really different context. My family is mixed. My maternal grandmother is the Romani line in my family, and her family is Sinti, which is a vizsla that's most common in Germany, Austria, and northern Italy. So when I was about 5, I mean, I spent so much time with my grandmother. She was a huge, huge part of my life. She only passed away the year that we finished writing the book.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, I miss her. And she really wanted to impart as much as the culture as she could on me. She grew up hiding her ethnicity in Nazi Germany, which is
Mm,
pretty intense. And it's a complicated thing, but basically, her family was taken in by a German farmer who actually wasn't that great. You would think he sounds like a saint, but he kind of sucked. And
mhm.
so, she had a very fragmented relationship with her culture, but she grew up still hearing all these stories and she was taught fortune telling and lots of cultural practices from her grandparents and her mother. But when she came to America, she didn't necessarily raise her own children that way. And instead, she just sprung it on them, surprise in their 20s that they were Romani. And they were like, I'm sorry, what? And
Wow.
she was a little not sure how much she wanted to share with them. But for whatever reason, when I came around, she really wanted to share a lot with me. So she raised me a lot like she was raised, starting when I was really young. This is our trade, this is what we do. And it was really the most beautiful part of my childhood. I had a challenging childhood in a lot of ways. And so that was really a beautiful outlet and resource for me.
Jezmina, where did you say you grew up? I'm sorry, I missed that.
Oh, I grew up in New Hampshire. Yeah.
Mhm, mhm.
Very homogenous, especially
Yeah.
in the 80s and 90s.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and so I stuck out a lot. She told me not to tell anyone we're gypsies because it's also interesting. A lot of Roma fortune tellers never actually call themselves Roma because it's still dangerous to do that.
Mhm.
It's not like we're profiting big time off of calling ourselves
Yeah, yeah,
gypsies.
yeah.
Like most Romani kids, I slip up. We experience a lot of racism and discrimination after that. And my culture was a really big part of me. And I felt really motivated to understand where we came from. I was probably 16 when I realized that Roma came from India, and my mind was so blown. And I was always encouraged to pursue whatever I wanted. So I'm a writer and I also do fortune telling, and I've always done those two things. And clients were so scarce, like Paulina was saying, like when we were kids, fortune telling wasn't that popular in the US,
Yeah.
even less so in New Hampshire. So a lot of my first clients were horses, and I would read for why a horse was lame or why it was biting everyone who worked at the barn.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and like little parties and things like that.
Wow. And how did you 2 come to know each other?
I love it when Paulina tells the story.
Oh, please do.
So I tell the beginning and then Jess takes it from there.
Okay.
So as I left the community when I was leaving, I was also like in this custody battle. Roma actually have their own court system. When you're in closed community, you don't go to like outside court.
Wow.
Obviously, unless it's an emergency, you can call the police. But other than that, like it's just not allowed. And one of our like laws or rules is that if a couple like separates, the man always gets the kids unless he doesn't want them. And so that's kind of just our group. Yeah, that's the way it is. Or they'll split them, which is rare, but it happens. And basically, I wanted to go to court. And once I had left and was like, whoa, like I can actually, fight for my children and like I have all these rights and stuff. I did feel like there was other people reaching out, feeling like they didn't belong in their community or like they wanted to get out, but they didn't really completely feel that great in the outside world because they're like, we grew up so differently. Like they were just kind of reaching out and like I was wanting to figure out a way to like communicate with people. I had seen a video of Jess talking about like Roma and that like gypsy is a slur. And what's super crazy is I didn't ever use the word Roma like or gypsy. I was like, I know I'm gypsy, but what is like Roma? We say Roma. So like it must be the same thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I think I had emailed you and then we had talked. I will tell you this. When I called Jess, I was like, I have this idea. I don't know, maybe a podcast, maybe this, maybe that. And Jess was like, no, you got the wrong person.
Oh, do tell, Jezmina.
It was 2020. I had just gotten COVID and I was really suffering with long COVID, and my mom had just died. It was a really tough time. And I was having a little bit of a crisis of identity where I felt like I sort of accidentally became like a spokesperson for Roma when really I just wanted to like write my feelings like in my poems or stories and be like, also, I'm mixed Roma. And a lot of people are understandably like, who are you to talk about us? You're mixed and assimilated. And so I was having this feeling where I was like, I can't take up that much space in community. Like that doesn't feel okay to me. Also, everyone's dead and I'm sick. And so I was really struggling. And so I was like, but I'll find you someone. Don't worry. And so I was reaching out to a bunch of folks who I thought maybe would be a good co-host for Paulina. And everyone was like, just do it. Like, what is wrong with you?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I was like, give me a few months and let me pull myself together and we'll do
Wow.
it.
So have you met in person ever?
Well, now we have.
Now we have, but it was over a year before we met and we were doing this podcast together.
Wow.
Maybe 2 years.
That's so beautiful. And then you decided to write this book together. And I'm feeling very self-conscious because we're almost out of time. And I feel like we spent most of our time on the first like third of the book. I want to be clear with people that so much of this book is about the actual practice of divination and fortune telling. And I hope you'll forgive me that we've taken so much time just giving people the context and the education. I think it's really valuable and important. But I want to emphasize that that is not the only thing this book is about. This book is also about the practice of fortune telling. And just quickly, you talk about the practice of course, tarot and reading cards. You talk about reading palms and faces. You talk about tea leaf reading and coffee ground reading. And something I really love also is you get into the business of fortune telling, the ethics of fortune telling, how you can be a good reader, how you can do it with a lot of, integrity and morals and spiritual, I'll just call it like high frequency intentions and stuff. So it's just a wonderful book. I want to make sure I give you both a little bit of time to talk about what else is in the book that you want to make sure people know about. Paulina, let's start with you. What else do you want to make sure that people are aware of when it comes to the practice of fortune telling and what felt important to you to share in the book?
I would say what is important to me about fortune telling in our book, I think, is the differences between fortune telling as you know it, because Romani people, it has been such an ancient practice for us. And I feel like it's just going to be super cool for everyone and like outsiders to be able to get a little peek or a big peek into how the practice is in our community and how they can incorporate it in their practice. So how the readers can incorporate it, including like some of our spiritual ceremonies, some of our herbal remedies. Those are also pretty good. And then there's
Mhm.
also other little tips, like how to deal with skeptics. That's one of my favorite parts.
Yes.
Because not a lot of people talk about it, but we know how to read people because we've been doing it for a long time. And on top of that, like we know how to have fun with it, and we also know how to make a living out of it. So yeah.
Beautifully said. Jezmina, what do you want to add?
I find that a lot of people, once they realize that, especially tarot is a Romani survival trait, it's a cultural practice, they're like, oh my God, how am I supposed to engage with it now? And so our book is really telling you, like, this is how you can do that. You can,
Yeah.
uplift Roma, and you can educate others, and you can not use the G word to market yourself, etc. So we have that kind of stuff if you're like, what do I do? And we also include some other really practical tips on how to build your intuition, because that's what a lot of our training was. And so if you feel like you are familiar with these tools, but you want to really learn how to read intuitively, we really show up for that, because there are lots of tarot books out there, but this is a Romani tarot book or
Absolutely.
fortune telling book. And so I love the intuition exercises, and we also give you a look at some of the less common practices like fire reading, trinket reading that Roma do, especially for ourselves, but you might not be familiar with.
Yes. And just to be clear, this book is for, we'll just call it a general audience.
Yeah.
This isn't a closed practice where if someone is reading tarot or tea leaves, you wouldn't accuse them of being culturally appropriative or doing anything wrong. You're not saying don't do it if you're not Roma. You're saying just know the history and do it with a little more sensitivity. Am I right about that?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely can read tarot in a super culturally appropriate way, and I've seen it. And so this book is sort of like, yeah, of course you can do it, but here's how.
Wonderfully said. Wonderfully said. In our final moments together, I know people are going to want to know how they can connect with you. So if you could share everything about where to find the book, the podcast, each of you online, and so on. Paulina, why don't we start with you?
You can listen to our podcast, the Romanistan podcast, anywhere you find your podcasts, really. And you can also listen on our website at romanistanpodcast.com. And we also have an Instagram at Romanistan Podcast. You can find me on Instagram. My fortune telling business or my holistic business is Romani Holistic on Instagram at Romani Holistic. My website's kind of under construction right now. And then my personal Instagram _Paulina_B_.
Perfect. And Jezmina, what else should we know about you and where to find your beautiful work?
You can find me on Instagram at Jezmina.Von Thiele. I also have a Patreon where I put out a lot of other content. So follow me there. And I have some very affordable tiers. Yeah, if you want to hear conversations, we interview a lot of different Romani people from different walks of life on our podcast. So if you want to hear more conversations about Romani culture in general, definitely tune into Romanistan Podcast.
Fabulous. Well, I want to thank each of you for writing this book. I want to thank you for being patient with my many questions and my ignorance, which you are helping to shrink quickly. And I just really, really enjoyed talking to you both and reading your words and hearing your words here in this conversation. So thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate you.
Oh, yeah. I have a website too, JezminaVonThiele.com. Sorry. I forgot that. Also that.
Great. Well, we will make sure the people know that as well. Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
That's it for the show. Thank you again to Paulina Stevens and Jezmina Von Thiele for sharing their tremendous traditions with me. Do you have questions, feedback, need some witchly advice, or just want to share something magical that happened to you recently? Drop us an email or voice message over at witchwavepodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you, and you just might make it on the Witch Wire. The Witch Wave is a Phantasmophile production written and produced by me, Pam Grossman. This episode was recorded, edited, and mixed by Josh Wilcox and/or Walter Nordquist and myself. Our theme music is the song Hand and I by Lycanthia. Our new Witch Wave logo was designed by Thunderwing. Special thanks go to Matt Freeman, Laura Antal, and Cece Pascal. You can check out information about this and other episodes on our website, and now buy Witchwave merch at witchwavepodcast.com. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook at witchwavepod, and you can check out my witch emoji for iPhone by going to witchemoji.com or downloading it in the App Store. My books Waking the Witch from Gallery Books and Witchcraft from Taschen are available everywhere now. And if you want more Witchwave or you would just like to support the show, please join us over on Patreon. That's patreon.com/witchwave. Thank you so much for listening. Witches are the future. I'll catch you next time on The Witch Wave.